Travel and wedding, two occasions that require us to pack our bags and hit the road, have once again led to strong sales for bags and suitcase makers in Q3. VIP, still dominant, still growing despite the size. Volumes grew nearly 35% in Q3. Agam had a chance to chat up with Chairman Dilip Piramal and started off by asking him about the factors that are driving growth for the industry. Listen in.
Well, everything is going good for the industry and for VIP particularly. And this is not one of our strongest quarters season-wise. In fact, our strongest quarter is the first quarter, April to June. And then, if anything, it is October to December. So October to December was a good season, but then that's every year. So the growth is on the same quarter last year. So the main factors of the growth is that I'll first talk about the industry. The industry is growing extremely well. And I think with GST, we have got a further impetus. So our industry is basically is driven by the travel industry and the marriage season. And marriages, of course, that spending depends on the growth of the economy. So the Indian economy is growing extremely well. Travel industry is booming. In fact, tourism is one of the fastest, probably the fastest growing industry in the world. So, and not only Bombay and Delhi, but a lot of international airports also are working at full capacity. In fact, like they are chock-a-block, Bombay airport particularly. So that shows that the travel industry is growing well, and if the airport capacity is available, they'll grow even more. So that is a very good sign for us. Then the general economy is doing well, and GST has given a good impetus to us, particularly in the smaller items, where we seem to have taken a good share from the unorganized sector. So all in all, there are a lot of tailwinds for the industry and for VIP, and we seem to be going fast ahead in that.
Okay, so Mr. Piramal, when it comes to the industry, and in the past you've also spoken about the fact that there is plenty of space for all players in this particular industry to grow at this point in time. That said, your market share is also significantly higher than about 50-55%, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not well versed with the latest figure, but the last number I've seen was at around 52%. Yeah. My question then is, where do we go from here when it comes to your market share, and what sort of churn are you seeing when it comes to the unorganized sector as against the organized sector then?
Well, I will now talk about, I spoke about the industry, I'll talk about VIP industries. We are in all segments of the luggage industry, right from the very top where we have the Carlton brand, and then our the largest segment is the mass premium segment, where we have VIP and Skybags, and both of them are doing extremely well. The rate of growth in Skybags is even more. And then in the economy sector, we have Aristocrat and Alpha. So we are growing extremely well in all the sectors. Then we have our handbags brand, Caprese, which also has become the largest brand in this sector, in the ladies' handbags. So we're seeing good growth in all the sectors, and we have got very good market share from the unorganized. I think that is for the entire industry, that in the lower end we have, and the unorganized sector is in the lower end. So we have got good market share there, particularly in small items like backpacks. We have seen the maximum growth in backpacks, and this trend will continue. We are not too concerned about the churn from the unorganized sector. That is because we concentrate more on what action we have to take. And I don't think that, we don't think of grabbing share from the unorganized sector. What happens is that the customers, the consumer graduates from the unorganized sector to the organized sector, and new consumers come in. People who have not been using luggage items so far, they enter the market, and they enter through the unorganized sector. And that is the case with any industry where there is a large unorganized sector. So that is what happens with us. And we are happy as long as our rate of growth is good.
Okay, so let's talk about the emerging part of the market then. and at this point in time, from what I understand, that you do get a substantial amount of revenues from your brands such as Skybags and VIP. Majority, if I can call it that, about good 60-65%, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this particular number. How do you anticipate the change in trends as we move into the next 1 year or so, or do you expect the large demand to remain the same and in terms of trends?
Well, let me tell you that Skybags has grown the maximum in the last 5 years. But in the current year, it is Aristocrat which is growing the largest, because Aristocrat is our economy brand. And as I said, that we seem to have gained share from the unorganized sector. So that happens mainly in Aristocrat. And all our brands are growing well, VIP and Carlton. Of course, the base of Carlton is very small. So I don't think that there is going to be too much of a change in the trend. It doesn't really matter to us.
Okay.
As long as our overall sales are good.
All right.
We are quite happy.
Okay, so Mr. Piramal, it's curious that you spoke about the growth in Aristocrat, because what I was also reading was that because of the fact that Aristocrat has been growing, for you, well, because that it commands relatively lower margins is the reason why we have seen a little bit of a drop in the quarter gone by when it comes to margins. To what extent would you attribute to that when it comes to margins subduedness, and is there anything else when it comes to input costs as well, considering a lot of your inputs are linked with crude as an attribution to, well, your margins coming off?
Well, I don't think crude is a major factor at all, but the consequences of crude is that the rupee got depreciated, and we import about 50% of our overall products. So that has had a very strong impact on our margins, because the rupee depreciated by about 10 to 12% in the last quarter as against the same quarter previous year. So that has had the biggest impact. Then the import duty was raised by 5%. So that is all across the board and for every company. So that was the biggest major increase in the cost. And of course, the margins in Aristocrat are a bit lower, and there is more competition in that segment, because everybody is going for that segment now. And in the other segments, we are relatively comfortable. So all this has combined to have low margins, and because of the competition, we have not been very aggressive and in increasing our sale prices, which will now happen, I think.
Okay, so just two more questions then. Also a word on your international business. How's business coming along, and the kind of contribution it is making to your overall revenues?
At the moment, our international business is less than 10% of our overall revenue. But in the domestic market, all the segments, there are about 8 trade channels, and I'm happy to say that all the 8 channels are doing extremely well.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, that your e-commerce channel has certainly picked up, but that's, again, is relatively small in terms of contribution. Can you tell us a little more about that as well?
Well, the highest growth is in the e-commerce segment, but yet it is, at the moment, it is less than 10%. So the impact is not so much, but when the growth is very high, then gradually it becomes a larger part of the business.
Okay, so
it's a very satisfactory trend we are seeing. All
right, so then finally, just leave us with a little bit more on the outlook going forward with respect to your top line, perhaps your bottom line. I'm not asking you for an exact guidance, but any sort of indication would do as we move into the next financial year.
Well, the top line, of course, is growing at a very high rate of growth. And the margins also, we have had a setback in the margins in the third quarter, and that will continue in this quarter. But definitely they'll improve from the first quarter of next year. So on the whole, the outlook is, I'm very optimistic.